Speaking of tag teams, we had a interesting matchup between the Vaudevillians and a couple of people that I was new to, and maybe you guys can talk a little bit about the two guys we had in the ring against the Vaudevillians last night.
Hugo, Noxon, and Tucker Knight. I was not too familiar with them, and I'm still not. But the only thing I know is that they're not your typical local athletes where they just bring in people from the local area. These guys are under developmental contracts, a lot like Baron Corbin was, who made a handful of appearances before reemerging as the Baron Corbin we know now today. You would never know. You would never know. Like, you see these people repackaged and whatnot, and you would never know that a couple years earlier they were just job guys. So we might be seeing these guys later down the line. But Hugo, Knox, and Tucker Knight, we didn't see too much from them last night in the tag team match versus the Vaudevillains. It was a fine match. It's kind of hard to blame the crowd for not being too engaged in the action just because... Well, two reasons. One, this match, from what I understand, took place very late in the tapings. That this whole event at the UFC, or UCF, I always get that mixed up, took place in late January, the weekend of the Royal Rumble, for as long before we even came back to campus, so a month and a half ago. They've been airing these matches from the arena that have been very, very good. But to expect this crowd to sit through Blake and Murphy, the Drifter, the Vaudevillains, 2 or 3 times in one night is asking a lot of the crowd, so I don't really blame them too much for sitting on their hands. That and the fact that the Vaudevillains by this point don't really interest me. I've never really been a too big fan of them just because I never really saw their gimmick getting over in the main roster. They are good athletes, and we talked before the show, before we went on the air here. Tom, you mentioned that their gimmick could be simplified. They could have motives to their characters. They could be tweaked in a way that they could get over in NXT, or they could have something going for them. But as it stands right now, as of what we saw last night, they're good wrestlers, and they have a simple gimmick, I guess, from what you can call it, and they're kind of teasing a subtle heel turn, but they're not really doing anything that, it's kind of, contradictory to the name. They're not Vaudevillains. They're, very gentlemanlike, which was what they were before they kind of started this subtle heel turn.
You're exactly right. They're a two-man gentleman band. That's exactly what they are. They come out, they have the moves, they have the poses, and I guess they're roping in a lot of that classical bodybuilding meets, traditional early stages of professional wrestling. The Greco meets the actual show and theater of wrestling. So I get it. Okay, that's enough said. You can understand that within seconds of them even walking out, or their cute little curtain speech with their man with the megaphone horn and everything like that. Those are the things that they need to ditch in order to become villains. And of course, the arc of a villain is really interesting. Obviously, to build someone up in an audience's mind and to corrupt that is a really special process that only villains really know how to do well. And I just don't see them knowing how to do that so well. I feel like part of their job is to go out there and get those crowd pops, especially against two guys that nobody knows. So who's the crowd expected to cheer for here? And obviously they're building up. They have a problem with the Hype Brothers, which seems just so unlikely. I guess their problem is that they live in a modern time. I don't understand what exactly the conflict between the Hype Brothers and the Vaudevillains are. But for me, I just truly hope, and this is not usually what I hope, but I truly hope that Mojo Rawley and Zack Ryder come out and just crush them and teach them to go away for a while and stay silent like they should be.
Well, at least they have something going for them, the Vaudevillains. Like I said, it's not really a gimmick or two characters that I'm not really invested in at the moment as a casual viewer, as a hardcore viewer, whatever, of NXT. But at least they have something going. I mean, they've already won the tag team titles. No tag team has ever won the tag team titles twice. And it doesn't look like they have their sights set on the tag team titles as of right now. They've been picking up a few victories here and there. One over the Hype Bros on a couple of weeks ago in NXT, and just last night over Hugo, Knox, and Tucker Knight. But it looks like their next step is taking out the Hype Bros, and they mentioned that, and they didn't talk about it, but the Hype Bros did in a backstage segment. So they furthered that feed, and I'm looking forward to it.
You can call them the Hype Brothers. Tom Phillips does.
Do they?
And he jumps back and forth. He
really?
goes, the Hype Brothers, and then Corey Graves has to be like, you mean the Hype Bros? And he's like, oh, yeah, the Hype Bros.
So I'm not wrong when I say that.
Okay. No, you're not wrong. Not wrong. You're not wrong.
But yeah, no, I like the it's something for them to do, and I love the fact that in NXT, something that we don't. I mean, we're kind of getting in the main roster right now. I'd be lying if I said we weren't. with the Dudley Boys and the Usos. That's a tag team feud that's not over the tag team titles as of this moment. So we do have multiple feuds going on right now in the tag team division on the main roster. But at NXT, we have American Alpha looking like they're, red hot right now, and they're looking like they have their sights set on those tag team titles. Most specifically, more importantly, Enzo and Cass and Dash and Dawson going into Roadblock. And now we have the Hype Bros and the Vaudevillians, a match that I'm looking forward to, surprisingly enough, because they have made me care about the feud. Not so much about the Vaudevillains, but I'm looking forward to the rematch they ultimately have, because the Vaudevillains, they handed the Hype Brothers, as Tom Phillips mentions, as he calls them, their first loss in NXT since joining up as the tag team. So there is some meaning there for a program that I'm, somewhat interested in.